Hey everyone, I'm Rachel from LoCasa, and today we're diving into something that can save you thousands of dollars and a lot of headaches, which is negotiating with property managers and landlords. Whether you're looking to rent your first apartment or renewing your lease, these strategies will help you get the best possible deal. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Let's go ahead and start with the foundation of any successful negotiation: supply and demand. The rental market is like any other market. When there are more available units than renters, you have the leverage. When there are more renters than units, landlords have the upper hand. But here's the thing, even in a landlord's market, you can still negotiate effectively if you know how. Here are the best things to research in the markets that you're interested in before any negotiation: vacancy rates in your target area, average rent prices for similar units, recent rent trends such as is it increasing or are they decreasing, new developments coming into the market, major employers moving in or out of the area. And pro tip, don't just look at the listing prices, look at how long these listings have been sitting empty. This can actually be your secret weapon to negotiations. Do things usually get picked up quickly or do they sit a while? That's going to be important to note. If it's somewhere in a market that isn't as high demand and people aren't moving there as frequently, or there's a lot more supply than there is demand, that is going to be important. Now, another thing that you want to note is the average rent price for similar units. The average rent price for an apartment in San Diego is not going to be the same rent price for a property in St. Louis, Missouri. It's just not. You have to understand that each market varies and you're going to have to kind of adapt. You're going to have to figure out, okay, what are the average rent prices in this neighborhood opposed to this one? Those are the things that you should be paying attention to, just to make sure you're getting an idea. When you do go to reach out to a landlord, you know that you're reaching out to a property that's on market with the rent price. It's about what the market is requiring, opposed to something that's super overpriced. It's going to be harder to get an owner down on a super overpriced property than it would be to potentially knock off a couple $100 from an average price unit. Hopefully you guys are kind of catching what I'm saying. Another thing is recent rent trends. So for example, are rents increasing or are they decreasing? Are they staying stagnant or are you seeing a large increase? Now, we don't want to forget about new developments coming to the market. So for example, I'm in Sacramento, California. The A's are actually coming into our city for the next 3 seasons, which is going to be huge for not only downtown West Sac, but Sacramento as a whole. So in the West Sac area where the actual stadium is, I'm seeing a lot more developments, a lot more people looking to move into this area, a lot more people willing to get closer to where the stadium is going to be. It's obviously going to increase rent prices. It's going to increase demand. It's going to increase the likeliness of other people moving around here. So therefore, the rent prices that you might have seen 5 years ago for this area are not going to be the same as they are for the next 3 years. A lot of us also know about major employers moving in or out of the area. So for example, you've seen a lot of different large employers moving to Texas, moving out of Silicon Valley, moving out of California, because the simple fact that not only are prices insane, laws are also ridiculous. So you might find that a lot of different employers or companies or large businesses are going to these other markets where you wouldn't really expect them to go, but they're doing it because it just makes more financial sense. So therefore, the employees, the team, the other individuals that are considering employment or vendors or contractors, they're all going to be in that same area as well. So they're going to need potential housing, they're going to need a place to stay. So that's always something important. And just to give you guys a little pro tip, I don't want you to only look at listing prices. When you're going and you're looking at the average listing price of a property, you also want to see how long has that unit been sitting empty. This can actually be your secret weapon in negotiations. And I tell people that all the time because on our website, what we have is a standard user, and our standard users are able to see deals that have been on our site for a month or longer, only deals that have been on our site for a month or longer. And they're always like, oh, I'm only getting to see the deals that have been there that nobody wants. Well, that might actually give you the upper hand. When you're able to see the deals that have been around the longest, you can then be like, okay, well, it's been around, no one has picked it up. What if I was to come in and pick it up and potentially just negotiate some free concessions, some rent terms, a potential rent reduction, something like that? Because at the end of the day, these landlords want their properties leased. And when it comes down to it, if they have to throw some money off, if they have to offer some concessions, they might just do it because they don't want it to keep sitting there. They don't want it to just keep sitting empty. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, is knowing your audience. You guys have to know who you're talking to. Understanding who you're negotiating with is crucial. Property managers and landlords have different motivations and decision-making powers. For example, property managers, they represent the owner's interests, not yours, not always yours. They also usually have strict guidelines that they must follow. In addition, they care more about the occupancy rate and the consistent income. Also, if you are trying to negotiate concessions, they may need owner's approval for significant discounts, along with them valuing professional and business-like approaches. Now, individual landlords are a little bit different. I've found that they've been a lot more flexible. They can make the decisions directly. You don't have to go through anyone else. They usually can be more flexible with terms, and they value responsible long-term tenants. So you being able to confirm that you can pay the rent on time, every time, all the time, they're going to value that a lot more than just having someone come in and only sign a 12-month lease. They want someone in there forever if they can. They're going to prioritize that peace of mind over maximum profit. Another thing is they tend to be more open to creative solutions. So for example, I've noticed that a large majority of single-family condo townhome owners are a lot more likely to say yes to short-term rentals and arbitrage opposed to an apartment building. We found that apartment buildings are it's a lot harder for them to say yes. It's a lot harder to get them on board because you have to go through so many channels, through so many people. But with landlords, they usually are like, okay, you know what, I think I'd be open to this because they're the main decision maker. It's their property, it's their asset. So they get to decide how they choose to let somebody run it at the end of the day. So that's also what I found. But here's what matters to both. Most important thing is reliable rent payments. They want to know that they're going to get paid their rent. They're going to be able to pay down their mortgage, that they're going to gain some type of cash flow. Most investors are not looking for a large sum of income off of the property as if an arbitrage tenant would. They just want that consistent cash flow. They get a lot of other real estate benefits associated with them owning a property, but really they just want those consistent and reliable rent payments. Another thing is property maintenance. Now, most of the time, management companies and owners will cover property maintenance except for minor wear and tear. So you have to expect that you're going to be the one covering minor wear and tear, but they will cover all of the larger maintenance issues such as plumbing, AC, roof, foundation, like those larger items, right? Especially things that are out of your control. Almost always I've seen that landlords will cover that. Another thing that's always going to be important is good communication. Good communication and professional behavior. They want to know that they're dealing with a professional. So make sure that whenever you are considering renting a property, that you aren't only saying, oh, I'm going to pay your payments every time. Oh, I'm willing to pay you more. Oh, I'm willing to do this and that. Well, really, they also want to know, are you responsible? Are you reliable? Do you have good communication? If there's any issues, can they get a hold of you? Being able to conduct yourself in a professional manner and having them feel confident in your abilities to be able to take care of the property and run it successfully. Now for the exciting part, actual negotiation strategies. The key is understanding that good negotiation isn't about winning at all costs. It's about finding mutual benefits. So here's some of the things that you can offer. Number one is longer lease terms. So instead of you saying, oh, I'll just do a 12-month lease, actually, I'll do a 2-year lease. I'll do a 3-year lease. I'll sign a longer term lease if you allow me to arbitrage your property, if you're willing to give me a couple of months free, if you're willing to take $200 off the rent every month, something like that. Another thing is upfront rent payments. Most of the time, owners will just want security deposit and first month's rent. But if you're willing to potentially do first month's rent, last month's rent, and security, or if it's first month's rent, maybe half of last month's rent, security, maybe your first 2 months free, or your first 2 months of rent up front, whatever the case may be, depending on supply and demand. Again, you have to know who you're talking to. If it's in a market where it's very competitive to even get a property to lease, you're going to have to play their game. You're not always going to get a first month free. You're not always going to get concessions. You're not always going to get rent reductions. But if the numbers make sense, based on what you want in your business and the profit that you're looking for your short-term rental, then who cares if you get a concession or not? You have to know who you're talking to, you have to know your market, and you have to know your numbers. Another thing that I talked about was handling minor maintenance yourself, handling those minor wear and tears, not calling them every single time a doorknob gets loose, not calling them every single time a light gets burnt out, things like that. Just handling the minor maintenance yourself. In addition to that, a lot of people think that they can just get into arbitrage opportunities with only their business credit. That is not always the case. Do not let anybody tell you that. And if they do, then I hope that every single property that you come across only lets you in with your business credit. Because what I've found, especially with single-family homeowners, is not only do they want to see that your business is established, and when I say business established. It doesn't have to be around for a long time. It doesn't have to have a ton of revenue in the bank. What I'm saying is just a legitimate entity that shows that you are structured, that you're able to conduct business. That's going to be important, yes, but all owners, almost every single one of them, including apartment buildings, are going to want to see proof of funds. And if you don't have any business credit or rental history from your business, they are going to want to see your personal credit and your personal rental history. So if you're coming in thinking that you're going to get something for nothing, you're going to have a very difficult time. And I always try to tell people that. A lot of people have high expectations. A lot of people tell them, oh, you can get in no problem. You don't need any personal credit. You don't need any personal rental history. Well, every landlord is different. Not every landlord is built the same. We can't negotiate the same thing on every single contract. It really just depends. So always make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And if you don't have the best credit, if you don't have the best rental history, if you don't have a ton of money in the bank, partnering up with someone that does, having someone in your corner, having a potential business partner that does have those things, that's going to be important. Now, here's some of the things that you can ask for. Number one is a rent reduction. So again, remember when you are negotiating these things, saying something along the lines of, hey, I'm willing to sign a longer lease, 2 to 3 years, if you'd be willing to offer me $200 off the rent every single month for the next 2 to 3 years. Like, that's going to be important. Or are you willing to include utilities? Would you be willing to include water, sewer, trash if it's not already included? If it's in an apartment building, maybe seeing if they're willing to throw in free parking for you if they normally would charge. On top of that, if there's some houses or apartments where maybe they don't have certain appliances, like I've seen some homes, especially if they were just remodeled, they may not have a washer and dryer, they may not even have a fridge. So trying to negotiate for those things, hey, can you include the fridge? You know, and that way you're not, and also asking and making sure that they're not trying to upcharge you to include it. They should be able to include washer and dryer if they don't already, or a fridge. So that's what I would say about that. Another thing is flexible payment schedules. So some owners are very old school. They may want an actual check, or they may want you to manually pay. Trying to see if they're willing to set up automatic payments, see if they have any, if they have any platform that they can utilize to where you can do auto pay. On top of that, asking what the grace period is for late payments or what the grace period is to pay. A lot of the times landlords will allow you up to the 3rd of the month to pay. And I always think that's great because at the end of the day, business fluctuates, things happen. So being able to at least have a little bit of a grace period, and then knowing what your late fees are. If you ever do happen to be late, just knowing how much that's going to be. Some apartment buildings charge percentages. Some of them charge a daily fee. So, I mean, you just really need to know these things. On top of that, permission for pets. So if they don't currently allow pets, or if they have pet fees, seeing if you can get those reduced, along with a waived admin fee or a waived app fee. Something like that. Also, let's not forget concessions. Hey, if I sign a 2 to 3 year lease, if I pay you first, last, and security up front, can I get the first 2 months free? So I'll pay first, last, and security, but I want the next 2 months to be able to operate, or I want the next 2 months to be able to set up my business and start running it effectively. And then once you get to that 3rd month, it's already paid for. And then you just have all your other months that you're paying, and then your last month's covered, and your security deposit you'll get back at the end. Hopefully that makes sense. So something like that. And then remember this golden rule. You always want to pair a request with an offer. I see a lot of people doing request, but there's nothing that they're willing to give back in return. The art of negotiation is being able to give and take, is being able to offer something for something. Not always. Sometimes you can get more than what you give, but at least showing goodwill in the sense of, you know what, I'm willing to do this if you can do this. If I was to provide you with this, how possible do you think it would be for me to get this? Something like that. They want to see that you're willing to put in some effort, that you're willing to give up something, that you're willing to actually meet them somewhere. Because if they just see that you're asking for everything but not willing to give anything, that might make them scratch their head a little. Well, why do I have to give you this, but you're not willing to do that? So that's one of the big things that I would also consider and just kind of remember. But for example, when you're pairing a request with an offer, you could say something along the lines of, I noticed the unit has been vacant for 2 months. I can sign an 18-month lease instead of 12 if you reduce the monthly rent by $100. So something like that. Just that's an example. You could always pitch it how you'd like, but I think that those are some of the things that you could be asking for, especially when you're first getting started or as you're continuing to scale. So now let's go ahead and talk about execution. Number one is doing your homework. So knowing your market rates, understanding your budget and how much you're willing to pay, as well as having your documents ready. When you're getting ready to do negotiations with the property owner or the property manager, you want to have that research already done. You want to know what's the current rent price they're asking for. Is that in line with the market rent? How long has the property been on the actual market? Why haven't they gotten it leased yet? Is this within my budget? Does this meet the numbers that I'm looking for? Okay, great. Based on these numbers, I'm going to need to request this in order to make it work. Because a lot of people are just throwing things out. Let me just preface that. A lot of people are just throwing things around. I have to have a month free. I have to get $500 off the rent. No, you actually don't. You don't have to do anything. If the numbers work with how it is, take it as it is. Maybe just ask for, hey, can I get a month free? It would just allow me more time to go ahead and set the property up and start generating revenue. Now, that's something you could always ask for. But even if they say no, if the deal still works, I would move forward with the deal. If you need a month free in order to make the deal work and they say no, you have to be willing to walk away. Because I've seen other people on the other side of things, they're not willing to give me a month free. That really is what I need to make the deal work. Oh, I'm just going to get it anyway. So you have to be willing to kind of stand on what you're saying in your negotiation, because if you're willing to just throw things out and if they say no to everything, but you still move forward, I mean, how does that look, right? You want to at least have things that you're requiring and things that you're asking for. And if they're not willing to give you anything now, at least at the beginning, what makes you think that if you ever were in a position where you needed to pay rent late, where you needed to get out of the lease, where you wanted to renew and you needed to negotiate again? I mean, if they know that you're willing to basically fold on anything that you ask, well, then what do you think they're going to try to use against you in the future? They're going to do the same thing. So we want to at least be as prepared as possible and just make sure that you do your research. That's really what it comes down to. So you also want to time it right. I've noticed that winter months often have better deals and the owners are willing to offer more concessions. You also want to be ready when leases typically turn over. So for example, if you're looking at an apartment building and you really want some units within that complex itself, staying up to date on availability, staying up to date on when move-outs are happening. Another thing is presenting yourself well. At the end of the day, you're representing yourself as a business person, no matter how big or small your company is. So you want to make sure you have proof of income, you have your references ready, and you have a prepared negotiation outline. Just knowing, like I said, exactly what you're asking for, exactly what you're willing to do, exactly what you're not willing to do, and be willing to walk away or be willing to sign the deal. If you do this for me, I can do this for you. And if they agree, you're willing to actually stand by your word and make things happen. Now, a couple of bonus tips for you guys is you always want to, number one, get everything in writing. Never, ever, ever trust anyone's word. You can believe it, you can acknowledge it, but until it is in writing, I would not even move forward with anything, put any money down. I wouldn't schedule any movers, nothing until it is all in writing, signed on the dotted line. You guys, literally, I've seen this happen time and time again. People make promises that they cannot keep, basically breaking a deal off, and things fall through. It happens. It sucks that it happens, but at the end of the day, what does Dan Fleshman always say? Sign contracts with everyone, even your mother. You want to have contracts. You want to have things in writing. It's going to be important. At the end of the day, as much as we love to do business with people and want to believe that everyone has the best intentions in the world, not that they don't, it's just get it all in writing. Please. Another thing is reviewing agreements carefully. I am not a lawyer. I do not pretend to be one. I do not claim that I am one. But whenever you are handling agreements, whenever you're handling lease contracts, whenever you're handling addendums, review it very carefully or ask an attorney or a lawyer to review it for you. Another thing, maintain professional communication and keep records of all interactions. That could be through text messages. That could be through emails. Literally anything, okay? So just make sure that you're keeping records of everything. I know I gave you guys a lot, so I hope that this was really helpful. Of course, as always, I'm going to let you guys know if you want to skip all of the research and gain access to deals that are already pre-approved for STR, at LoCasa, we've created a platform where you can view deals across the country that are already pre-approved for your arbitrage business. We've done the work of getting the yes, collecting the relevant information, double-checking regulations, and running the numbers. In addition, we're happy to negotiate on your behalf to get you the best deal possible. Visit LoCasa.com to register for free access to these deals. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real estate and negotiation strategies. Also, go ahead and drop a comment below sharing your own negotiation experiences. I'd love to hear them. I'm sure we've all dealt with some very interesting ones. But again, guys, thanks for watching. And remember, successful negotiation isn't about being aggressive. It isn't about who all has the upper hand and who's going to get the most out of the other person and really squeezing them. It's about being prepared, having transparency, knowing what you're talking about, and finding a win-win solution. Thanks, guys. See you on the next video.